co-host hakkı alabilir miyim acaba?
Sema hocam.
Paylaşım için mi hocam?
Evet.
Harun'un da share edebilmesi için screen'ini.
İzin verdim şu an.
Tamam.
Yayındayız hocam. Teşekkürler.
Okay. Hi everyone, greetings to everyone wherever you are in the world. It's good to be is part of this conference. Is amazing discussions taking place, bringing heterodox school in particular to the debate in economics matters. And in this conference, we have three special sessions in Islamic economics, mostly looking at from the theoretical perspective to some of the issues that we have in front of us. Islamic economics is an emerging session. As I mentioned in my keynote speech, it is a new area, excitingly, but at the same time, we have seen that it evolved into Islamic finance. But with this session, our objective is to bring some of the conceptual issues to the debate. Therefore, in the first session, we have three sessions, and now we are in the first special session on Islamic economics. We have two colleagues, Harun Şencel, Dr. Harun Şencel from Istanbul 29th May University, 29th May University, and he will be talking about a critical comparison of venture capital and mudaraba partnership, a particular partnership model that Islamic economics offer. Harun has a PhD from Durham, and he has been lecturer at the Istanbul 29th May University. The second guest will be, speaker will be Dr. Abdulkadir Al-Aloui. He is from the International University of Rabat, Morocco. He's a lecturer in economics. He has done his PhD in Islamic finance at INCF in Malaysia, but he spent over 1.5 years, close to 2 years in Durham as a postdoctoral. So we consider Abdulkadir as part of the Durham family as well. We'll start with Harun, looking into the critical comparison of venture capital and mudaraba partnership, and we'll try to stick to our time, hopefully. Harun is all yours.
Thanks very much, Professor. Just let me share the screen. Hello, everyone. In this presentation, I will try to point out a problem we face when we conduct research in Islamic economics, a general problem we usually fall into, which is anachronism. In the first part, I will try to elaborate this problem through a comparison of venture capital and mudaraba partnership by focusing on three main differences between two forms of partnerships. Then, to elaborate this issue further, I will give the utilization of cash waqf in contemporary period as another example of anachronism. This time, however, instead of comparing a pre-modern and modern institution, the researchers bring a historical institution to contemporary period to facilitate a requirement of capitalist market system, which is capital accumulation. In the last part, I will discuss the reason why we fall into this trap and how can we avoid it to a certain extent. Since Islamic economics is an interdisciplinary field, when we conduct research, we benefit from multiple sources to explore the topics at hand. Of course, Quran and Sunnah are the primary sources. Another important source for the researchers is the historical institutions and the experiences of the past and present societies, particularly Muslim societies, if we want to develop an institution to respond to a modern problem, such as providing credit to home buyers or justifying an existing institution, product, or service in terms of Sharia compliance. However, transferring the knowledge that belongs to the pre-modern Muslim societies, which is produced within a different context, and as part of a particular relationships and institutions, is not an easy task. First of all, it requires to recognize the context we are dealing with, and also we need to understand how the relationship or institution we are investigating is related to that particular context. Such difficulty, if not approached cautiously, might cause an anachronistic interpretation of the historical sources. To elaborate this issue, I will explore the partnership institution as implemented in the pre-modern Muslim societies and critically analyze how presenting venture capital as a modern version of mudaraba partnership leads to the anachronistic interpretation of the partnerships. In mudaraba contract, one party provides the capital and the other party uses the capital to earn a profit by using his or her labor. Then the partners share the profit according to a pre-agreed ratio. In venture capital, in a similar fashion, one party provides the capital and the other provides the labor, or we can say entrepreneurship skills. An entrepreneur or group of entrepreneurs acquire capital from venture capitalists to earn money by implementing the idea or initiating the projects they plan. At the face value, we might consider two forms of partnerships are similar, and venture capital is a modern version of mudaraba contract. However, judging based on the similarities between the two forms of partnerships would lead to misinterpretation. Such misinterpretation is due to anachronism. There are three main differences in this presentation I want to focus on between the context of the mudaraba contract and venture capital, which directly affect the establishment and operations of these two partnership models. Firstly, the mudaraba contract has been implemented in a period in which labor was not commodified. Therefore, in the pre-modern context, to find someone to operate the available capital to earn money, the partnership was the viable option. Actually, it might be the only option since we cannot talk about an always available market of labor to hire and to operate business on our behalf with the provided capital. On the other hand, in the modern context, a labor market exists to sustain the continuous supply of labor for the capitalist businesses in exchange for a salary, without the necessity of sharing the profit. However, a new group of people with the entrepreneurship skills has emerged who lacks the required capital, but has potential ideas to sell and make a huge amount of profit if the potential is realized in the market. So instead of labor, they have entrepreneurship skills, which requires capital, similar to the labor in the mudaraba partnership. This group of entrepreneurs cannot be hired directly from the labor market since they demand partnerships in the form of venture capital structure of the partnership. So commodification of labor in the modern period is the first difference. The second difference is that the mudaraba partnership in Muslim societies was not conducted under the umbrella of legal personality. So these partnership models were not long-term agreements, but mostly short-term business partnerships limited to the lifetime of the partners at the most, and mostly among two individuals. However, in the modern capitalist system, the parties enter a partnership agreement as legal entities. Main reason behind the emergence of legal entities is to prevent the division of accumulated capital. Of course, such a structure also helps to protect the shareholders thanks to the limited liability. In such a legal structure, taking risk is easier since you will not be liable for the debt you incur. Third difference is the transformation of uncertainty into risk and earning profit through commodification of risk. Thanks to the statistics and probability calculations, the concept of the uncertainty has transformed into the concept of risk in the modern period. And as a consequence of the commodification of risk, undertaking risky investments has become an important method of profit maximization thanks to the risk management. Venture capital, through diversification of risk and benefiting from the advancement in the statistics, is a particular form of partnership that cannot be a standalone contract, but must be a part of a portfolio of risky investments. The aim is to compensate the failed investments by successful investments with high return risk ratio. On the other hand, in the mudaraba contract of the pre-modern period, there is no risk diversification, since each partnership contract is conducted by itself without any division of capital among the various projects according to the riskiness of the projects. So far, I tried to highlight the three differences, which I believe shows that these two partnership models belong to two different contexts. Venture capital, despite superficial similarities with the mudaraba contract, can only exist in a capitalist social formation due to the commodification of labor, existence of legal personality according to law, and possibility of diversification of risk through calculations, available projects, and accumulated capital to make the diversification of risk possible. Well, we face an important question here. Why do researchers or practitioners fall into the trap of anachronism? I believe some of the researchers makes this mistake due to the lack of comprehensive analysis of the context or rush to reach a conclusion. The researchers in this category are not very dangerous since their intention is to benefit from the historical resources, but due to the lack of proper method to extract that knowledge, they fail to conduct a proper exploration. However, another group of researchers commits this mistake as a consequence of the efforts for legitimizing the modern relationships and institutions on the ground of Quran, Sunnah, or the experience of past Muslim societies. I argue that behind this mistake, there is a particular assumption. The political economy of the contemporary period in terms of political regime and economic affairs are the end of history. So no other form of social formation is possible. One way or another, we have to accept, legitimize, and if necessary, modify what we have. Also, some of these researchers assume that the existing institutions in the modern period are continuation of the past institutions, assuming that there is no fracture in the course of time, but only evolvement. During this linear progression of the societies, some elements unsuitable from the perspective of Islam might be added, but we can remove these elements, such as interest-bearing transaction. Hence, we can justify the existing institutions based on similarities. To elaborate the issue further, let me give you another example of such policy, the utilization of cash waqfs to accumulate capital in Islamic financial institutions. Cash waqf is a trust fund established with money to support services to mankind in the name of Allah. Today, most of the researchers in the Islamic economics do not problematize the capital accumulation as if it is an ahistorical phenomenon. Accumulated capital through cash waqfs are intended to fulfill the capital requirements of institutions in the modern period, such as Islamic microfinance or Islamic insurance. In the Ottoman period, the cash waqfs were particularly utilized to meet the short-term cash needs of the Muslims. Although there were many cash waqfs at one point in the history, total volume of the cash amount of the waqfs was quite lower relative to the traditional waqfs. By traditional, I mean like public waqfs, family waqfs. They were not utilized with the purpose of capital accumulation and mostly stayed local. In the capitalist market system, however, cash waqf is utilized with the objective of capital accumulation. Why? Because in the capitalist market system, capital accumulation is the necessary condition for establishing an organization, whether it is Islamic or not. Hence, the researchers look for an institution in the past that can be utilized for capital accumulation, an institution that's compatible with the principles of the capitalist market system. We can argue that cash waqf is compatible with the market system, unlike other forms of waqf, such as public or family waqfs, because French Orientalists and colonialist powers put efforts to destroy the waqf-based social formation in North Africa, for instance, to establish the free market system due to the disruptive nature of public or family waqf that used to make up the underlying structure of social formation in North Africa. However, we can promote the cash waqf without any difficulty in financial sector in contemporary period. Highlighting the differences instead of the similarities would help the researchers to be more cautious in transferring the knowledge of the past societies to modern period, and gives the opportunity of establishing institutions in line with the morality of Islam rather than reconstructing and representing the historical institutions based on the principles of the capitalist market system, or embracing the existing institutions established to advance capitalist societies. We advocate that the researchers should put more emphasis on the difference instead of the similarities in explorations of the historical institutions, and transfer the knowledge considering the revealed differences. Such a method of utilization of historical institutions would only help us to legitimize our modern economic affairs without disrupting the existing relationships and institutions. Also, this would further facilitate the inclusion of Muslim individuals into the capitalist market system. As in the example of cash waqf, a Muslim might not prefer to use Islamic or conventional banks to invest the wealth. However, cash waqfs or similar institutions with Islamic connotations might be attractive and facilitate the financial inclusion of Muslim individuals. So, unfortunately, sometimes we are not exploring the historical institutions to find out how Muslim societies had dealt with their economic affairs. Rather, we look for an institution that can meet our needs in the capitalist system, at least at the form level. When we find such an institution, we take it partially without considering the context it is located in and the purpose it is utilized for, and try to implement it in the capitalist market system. We should be careful about such process because there is a paradigmatic difference between pre-modern Muslim societies and modern societies. While the modern relationships and institutions have been the product of enlightenment, the relationships and institutions of past Muslim societies were shaped in line with the ontology of Islam. So, neglecting such paradigmatic differences might end up with anachronism and only help us to justify the existing way of life in the modern world. How can we avoid anachronism? Or maybe we should ask, can we avoid anachronism when we deal with the historical context? Actually, I believe it is very difficult, if not impossible, to avoid it. But still, there are some precautions we can take when we analyze historical institutions. Firstly, we shouldn't try to look for concepts that exclusively belong to the modern period. A good example might be the human rights. There are some studies emphasizing how Abu Bakr used to act in line with human rights, for instance. There might be some superficial similarities, but that doesn't mean Abu Bakr had any concern regarding the human rights. Secondly, there might be concepts with a long history, such as state, ijtihad, fatwa, and others. In such cases, we should approach these concepts to reveal the transformation points to find out at which points in time these concepts changed qualitatively and quantitatively. While Hallak's works, such as The Impossible State and Rethinking Orientalism, are good examples of such explorations. To do that, we shouldn't only focus on the similarities between two institutions, but also explore the differences. We should examine the differences to find out whether a particular difference has led to a qualitative transformation and what is the extent of that transformation. By difference, I am not only referring to the institution itself, but also the context it is located in. Previous example of cash waqf shows that even if the institution is transferred more or less similar from pre-modern to modern context, due to the change of the context it is located in, the outcome of that institution might differ. As for the cash waqf, for instance, the outcome of the institution is now capital accumulation, to serve the needs of capitalist market system. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Harun. It's a very enjoyable piece and raising questions about the current practices we have and how institution emerges and perhaps creating these hybridities and unfortunately consequences of those hybridities, how they are justified. It is enjoyable. I wish we can have some time to discuss, but just in order to save the time, I will shift up to Kadir. Then hopefully when we have time, perhaps we can do some critical reflection. Abdulkadir's floor or the screen is yours. Abdulkadir will be looking at another important aspect of Islamic political economy, an important disruptive institution of Islam, zakat, and then looking at the zakat, how it contributes to the political economy of Islam. However, here Abdulkadir will be looking into the modeling, the endogenization of zakat within the distributive moral economy of Islam. It is all yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Prof. Mehmet. It's a pleasure for me to share with you the work that we started together in Durham University. So let's start with a simple introduction, why we should work on zakat and what is the link with this multiplier effect, which is the core of this work.
Abdulkadir, if you don't mind, if you go to the show part of your presentation, that will be better. I think the screen will be better.
Okay, screen. Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. You're welcome. So the idea here is just we are inspired from the new classical model, economic growth, because it's considered to be mainly determined by capital. So if we try to be in line with them, just hypothetically, so we can talk about endogenous growth theories that are introduced intangible factors contributing to that process in distributive-oriented societies. So Keynesian aggregated demand-oriented analysis seems more efficient way of examining the determinants of growth. This paper, therefore, aims to bring another dimension in a heterodox manner to economic growth theories through a redistributive moral economy of Islam, that is the endogenization of mandatory alms given, namely zakat. Zakat is not a simple action of charity. It is a real action to enrich people and make them autonomous and convert them to zakat payers, so to enhance the development of a society. Zakat is a secular political economy, secular political economy is mostly a voluntary arrangement, yet spiritually it still remains compulsory, which is levied on individuals beyond threshold level of wealth. Zakat calculation can be a sophisticated exercise due to its nature and also the particular wealth areas it targets, but in a simple manner, it can be between 2.5 to 20%. Why? Because scholars in Islamic era starting, they said, if in a state we need to increase zakat beyond 2.5, we should do it. Why? To struggle and to try to reduce as far as possible the poverty in a society. So considering that it is a redistributive tool in the economy within Islamic social formation, we aim to examine the growth impact of zakat through Keynesian aggregate demand and consumption function. This growth can be expressed in two ways. One, in a secular economy model, due to the high marginal propensity to save of the recipient through a multiplies mechanism. The zakat tax is returned to the economy through a much higher impact. That is why we try to do. And those recipients, including people from the lower economic strata, will get benefit to enhance their socioeconomic conditions, as zakat for them is considered as entitlement. So the analysis of zakat policy inspired from the Keynesian multiplier model related to the government fiscal policy shows that zakat has an expansionary effect on national output, including the investment. The objective is to find out the wealth that can be transferred from the nation output to the zakat recipient. This is the first point. We want just to see, since we know clearly that there is a class of people that are benefiting more from their resources that are provided in given in a society, and you have another class which is the class of the poorest. So we need clearly a transfer, if in which proportion we have to transfer the wealth from the rich to the poor. That is the first idea of this work. So we have some assumptions. First assumption, or the main one, is we assume that the marginal propensity to consume of the zakat beneficiaries is near to 100% because of their difficult economic conditions. Their needs means what? Their needs is so high so that any new income should be spent to fulfill their basic human needs. In other words, their essential needs are so high that they cannot be in a position to save. So their marginal propensity to save, MPS, which is the extra saving generated by an extra income of disposable income, could not be but quasi near to zero. We use here a simplified formalization of an economic system to better understand the impact of zakat that should be given to specific defined categories. So we denote by Y the GDP, Z the zakat rate, ZY represent the part taken from the nation income and given to zakat fund in the form of zakat. So this is a simple graph showing this kind of circulation of the wealth from the nation to the capable recipient. So ZY is assumed to be re-injected in economy because of the high value of MPS of zakatable population. So following this, we just try to compute the total wealth of the nation based off each year. And then that is why you can see here the first year zakat that is transferred, the wealth that is transferred, ZY. Second year, we assume that we have G, which is the annual growth of GDP. So we have 1 plus G, and we assume it constant during the whole years. So each year you have to multiply by the same factor, which is 1 plus G ZY, then it's exponential, as you can see. So when we take this equation, we simplify and we get this coefficient here, which is based on Z and G. So YZ is dependent on particular multiplier and the total output Y. The multiplier is dependent on two parameters, zakat rate and GDP growth. So to have a clearer picture about the transfer of wealth between the whole nation and the zakatable categories, we draw the multiplier function of WZ with different level, G equal -1 until 20, just a theoretical stuff to see what will happen. Here you can see.
Sorry to interrupt. We have time, so you do not need to rush. Okay. I'm following the time, but we have time.
Okay. Please let me know if I have.
No, don't worry.
Yeah. So we will see in the next figure that in the x-axis, we will represent Z, the zakat factor coefficient, and the coefficient of the wealth transfer on the Y will be on the wealth will be on the Y. So you can see here that in the x-axis we put zakat based on this principle that zakat can move from 2.5%, this blue arrow, until a high level as far as we can struggle to reduce the level of poor in the nation. And here you have the nation wealth transfer coefficient. So we can see here that if we zoom on that, here you can see different curves based on the growth, GDP growth. We can see that the growth can be 10% and even can be 0 or negative. So we can zoom and you can see here that these dots, red dots, showing that when this coefficient of transfer, when we have a high growth, we are transferring a high wealth to the poor. When in the opposite, we have a negative growth, let's say -1, we are transferring less. So we are in a kind of opposite way of the banking system, in which you have, when we have high growth, you have they are providing more financing to the economy, and when you have less, they are stopping. But this is just the first approach. So under bad economic conditions and recession, the wealth transfer coefficient becomes smaller, giving a chance to the economy to recover. If zakat can be assimilated to a tax on the rich, this tax seems not strangling or asphyxiating the economy during its contraction period. It cannot be considered as a pro-cyclical phenomenon in regard to the business cycle of the economy. So just to bring a discussion, we have brought two dimensions, two notions. The first one is the Gini index, which is developed by World Bank. It measures the extent to which the distribution of income, or in some cases, consumption among individuals or households within an economy, deviates from a perfect equal distribution. So you can hear, we have taken first Morocco, then Turkey, and we see the Gini index. We didn't have more statistics, unfortunately, for the case in Morocco. We have only 2000, and you can see is roughly around 40%. So a Gini index near to 0 represents absolute equality, and a value of 100% represents absolute inequality. So in the case of Morocco, we are around 40%, and this means we need really to work on a transfer of wealth from the poor, from the rich to the poor. And here you have the graph, because in the case of Turkey, we have more values from 2002 here until 2018. That is why we have the graph taken from World Bank. And you can see again here in 2002, in case of Turkey, is around 40, and it ends in 2019 by around same 40, less than 42. Sometimes is that means the economy here was doing well in terms of transfer of the redistribution of richness of the nation. And here again, we are, you see, we are around. And in the case of Germany or France or Italy, it's lesser than that, but still around 30%. So this means that the distribution of wealth in Morocco and Turkey is somehow unfair. A distribution of a certain wealth in the form of zakat will act in a positive way on the Gini coefficient. To correct theoretically this inequality, it is more appropriate to set the zakat rate at theoretically 17%, which is corresponding to 40% of wealth transfer. However, in other words, applying zakat system at the rate of 2.5% for the lunar year, which equivalent to 2.57 for a Gregorian year, will take the society around 7 years to correct the economic unfairness. That means 17 divided by 2.5. This redistribution might boost the domestic economy during the first years and may shift the income Gini coefficient to fair values. Now let's look to the second notion, which is based on changes in inventory. So when we look at the change in inventory in the case of Turkey, in case of Morocco first, then Turkey later, this is the case of Morocco. We have the top highest is 5.9 billion of inventories. That means the companies producing goods, they have an increase in their inventories. And this means when this country is going through a shock, financial or economic shock, people got less money, and the increase of inventory can be seen heavily in the industries. So in the case of Turkey, the behavior is different. You can see here the maximum which has been reached during 2011, just after the financial crisis, and it has been decreasing, but in 2000, but still in 2019, it was around, yeah, it was quite negative, I think.
Yes.
So for the discussion, for the case of Morocco and Turkey, changes in inventory have increased, respectively to the level of 5.9 in 2019 in the case of Morocco and around 7 billion in 2017 in the case of Turkey. This means that sales are slowing and the economy's rate of growth is also slowing, which may force future cat production of goods. This confirmed by the fact that industrial production, which measures the output of businesses integrated in the manufacturing sector of the economy, has significantly contracted during the concerned years. So zakat rate of 2.5% applied to the domestic outputs will increase the wealth transfer given to the zakatable recipient by around 7%. We can see it in the graph that I have shown before. So since marginal propensity to consume is near to 100%, this will be enough to siphon latent inventories and gives a positive effect to the growth of the economy of the country. So now let's move to the second concept, which is based on Keynesian theory and zakat system. Here, just a simple, Keynesian consumption function, spending versus consumption. And you have this red line, which is the 45 degrees line where income equals spending. And here you have the black line is the consumption. So the slope of the consumption curve, black line, represent the marginal propensity to consume that indicates the portion of additional income that is used for consumption expenditures. The intercept here indicate the autonomous consumption. So the aggregate consumption is expressed as follows: C plus C0 plus C times Y minus T. So C0 is the autonomous consumption. Whatsoever is happening in the country or the economy, we still have an autonomous consumption at any time. So the induced consumption as a function of the disposable income times the marginal propensity to consume is the second factor, second component. So the disposable income can be expressed as the aggregate output minus the government taxes. So since the zakat should be taken from the income of the previous year, we add the zakat terms as percentage of the current output discounted by the GDP growth times the zakat. That is why you can see here we have added in the equation 2, the factor which is Z over 1 plus G times Y. Why divided by? Because we are discounting because it's taken Z minus 1, year minus 1. So however, the Keynesian cross expression of total planned expenditure is given in the equation below, which is known. So now we replace the C given in the equation 1, the Keynesian cross expression of total planned expenditure. This gives the equation 4, which is this one. And where IP is the planned investment, G is the government spending, and NX is then the net export. B is assumed as constant for the sake of simplicity of the analysis. So this B, which is the investment plus the government spending and export, is just to assume to be constant, just to simplify the analysis. So this means that the equilibrium happens at the intersection point between the expenditure and the line with a slope of 45 angle called the Keynesian cross. We make the equation EP equal Y. Then after transformation, we get Y equal this factor, which is based on 1 over 1 minus C minus Z over 1 plus G. So now this means that the equilibrium happens at the intersection point and we get this value, and we replace 1 minus C by the value of marginal propensity to save. So the expression of the multiplier of the economy in the equation above can be written as follow. And to get a simple idea, we try to draw the long run economic multiplier for marginal propensity to save equal to 40%. So we can see here, so you can see that the economic multiplier growth of 10% is the lowest line, and the highest line is for economic multiplier growth of -1. So we can see that the economic multiplier has a natural regulating effect since it is negatively correlated with the GDP growth. So the economic multiplier is negatively correlated, of course. Zakat seems to be able to increase consumption of goods of common usage, staples, by zakat recipients. This will stimulate production through decreasing the inventories of goods that are more suitable to the poor and the needy. This means also that the economic multiplier is higher during recession compared to expansion period positive growth. So the economic multiplier is playing an anti-cyclical role. This shows that zakat has an auto-regulating effect on the economy. So an increase in total aggregate demand will stimulate investment, leads to less employment and more profit for the shareholders, which can lead to more allocation of resources towards the needy through the zakat payment. This can create a virtuous cycle. According to the Okun's law, there is a correlation between output and unemployment rate in the way that 1% change in employment rate is associated with 2% change of output in the opposite direction. So the idea why we brought the idea of Okun's law, just to say, look, if we can apply the zakat we know that has this effect on reducing the inventories. So that means firms will work better, will hire more people, so they will reduce the unemployment. The owners of the firms, which are represented by the richest people in the society, will become more rich. And at the same time, the fact that they are able to pay zakat, this will energize their own richness or their own businesses. And this is idea given by Okun law that one is better when we reduce the unemployment by 1%, we are able to have an output with 2%. So now the last things is same idea that just we brought before, but rather than to work on infinity, this circular economy effect will apply it only for n years. We don't know if it can be 10 years, 15 or 20 or 30. That is why you have this graph showing this zakat calculation. And just to show you here how we bring the result, in this section we separate the zakat amount from domestic income of the output, and we can get for each year what is transferred as zakat. And at the end, we can compute the economic multiplier again, but this time is based on n, which is not going for infinity, but is a fixed number of years during which we apply zakat. So after factoring and supplying and simplifying, we get this last formula is based on G, Mn is depending on 3 parameters: zakat rate, Z, the growth, and the GDP. So let's go and get a graph only for, the graph for one case. And we can see here, so in the x-axis, we have taken the growth rate from negative to until 10%, the growth in the country of the economy. And in the left, we have the nation output due to zakat effect. And we can see here that when you are taking the blue line, zakat is, you apply the zakat system during 30 years, you have the wealth of the nation is increasing exponentially. If you apply it only during 5 years, you have this multiplier is lesser than that. And as far as the growth is growing, is increasing in your economy, so you can see a positive effect on your wealth. That means even if theoretically, if you compare two countries, one is applying zakat system and the other is not. So the one is applying zakat system will have quick development in an exponential way. So we have seen as a conclusion and summary of this attempt to work on zakat multiplier, we have seen a positive effect of zakat at two levels. Transfer of wealth can implicitly reduce both the Gini index and inventories, even if we didn't model the Gini index and the inventories within the equations, but we brought them just for the discussion. Yeah, it will be better in future model to implement Gini index and inventories within the model. So the second positive effect of zakat is we have taken a simplified model by applying the Y GDP as national income, apply the zakat coefficient for infinity and during in years. So the zakat, in both cases, we have seen that the zakat economic multiplier can play an anti-cyclical role, and this shows that zakat has an auto-regulating effect on the economy. And the third point is can pushing the economy to have an exponential growth and development.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kadir. It's exciting. Unfortunately, I got a message that we have to finish, although I had some comments, but it is exciting within the existing endogenous growth theory to see it. But also, hopefully, we can work on developing this one to look within the Islamic political economy modes of production to expand the paper. Hopefully, in this next paper, we can look into that. It is exciting. Thank you for sharing your paper. And Harun, it was an excellent idea to look into this emerging hybridities under the assumption that we are doing authenticity, and therefore looking at this tension areas. Hopefully we can continue to discuss those areas. Unfortunately, we have to finish now, but I'm really grateful to both of you for bringing new ways of understanding Islamic economics related matter to the table. And hopefully we can generate a debate about these papers for the future conferences and the research. Thank you. And thank you very much for organizers. Sema Hocam is all with you.
Thank you very much.